Dr. Elena Voss stared at the crystalline data cube floating in the containment field, her hands trembling despite years of archaeological training. The artifact had been discovered deep beneath the Martian polar ice, in a chamber that shouldn't have existed according to every geological survey ever conducted. What disturbed her most wasn't the impossible age of the structure predating human civilization by millions of years, but the unmistakably human DNA sequences encoded within the crystal's molecular lattice. "Run the analysis again," she whispered to her assistant Tom Blake, who stood beside her in the sterile research bay of the orbital station Prometheus. The young man's face reflected the same mixture of awe and terror that had haunted Elena's dreams for the past 3 weeks. "Fifth time, same result," Tom replied, his voice barely audible. "The genetic markers are definitely human, but they're perfect. No junk DNA, no evolutionary remnants, no random mutations. It's like someone took our current genome and refined it to mathematical precision." Elena walked to the observation window, gazing down at Mars' rust-colored surface. The planet had given up many secrets over the decades of human exploration, but nothing like this. The implications were staggering. If the dating was correct, this artifact predated the evolution of complex life on Earth by hundreds of millions of years. "There's something else," Tom continued, pulling up a holographic display. "The quantum resonance patterns in the crystal. They match brainwave signatures. Specifically, human brainwave signatures during moments of extreme creativity and problem-solving." Elena turned back to face him, her heart racing. "Show me." The hologram shifted, displaying wave patterns that pulsed with an almost musical rhythm. She recognized the neural patterns from her own research into consciousness and temporal mechanics, the same patterns that emerged when humans pushed the boundaries of scientific discovery or artistic creation. "It's as if someone captured the essence of human innovation itself," Tom said, his voice filled with wonder. "But how is that possible? We're talking about a time when Earth was nothing but primordial soup." Elena felt a chill run down her spine as the impossible thought began to form. She had spent her career studying the paradoxes of time and causality, but she had never encountered anything like this. The evidence was pointing toward a conclusion that defied everything humanity believed about its own origins. "Tom," she said slowly, "what if we're looking at this backwards? What if this isn't evidence of some ancient civilization that happened to share our DNA?" Tom's eyes widened as he grasped the implication. "You're suggesting..." "I'm suggesting that maybe we didn't evolve at all. Maybe we were designed, engineered, by ourselves." The weight of the revelation hung in the air between them like a physical presence. Elena thought about the countless human achievements that had seemed to come from nowhere, sudden leaps in understanding that propelled civilization forward in ways that pure evolution couldn't explain. The development of language, the invention of writing, the discovery of fire, the leap to abstract mathematics and quantum physics. Every great bond starts with a single moment of courage. HFY Chronicle Stories is just beginning, and your support matters. If you love emotional sci-fi tales, forbidden connections, and stories that stay with you, hit subscribe. It's free, and it helps us bring more stories from the stars to you. "If that's true," Tom whispered, "then we're not just another species that happened to develop intelligence. We're something unprecedented. Something that created itself across time." Elena nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. The crystal wasn't just an artifact, it was a message, a blueprint, a promise from humanity's future to its past, ensuring that the species would not only survive, but thrive in ways that natural evolution could never achieve. "We need to decode the rest of the data," she said, her voice gaining strength and determination. "If we're right about this, then everything we thought we knew about human potential is just the beginning." 3 months later, Elena stood before the Global Scientific Council, the decoded data from the Martian crystal projected behind her in brilliant detail. The chamber was packed with the world's leading scientists, philosophers, and government officials, all struggling to comprehend the implications of what she was about to reveal. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elena began, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was sharing, "we have discovered that humanity is not the product of random evolution, but rather the result of a deliberate temporal engineering project conducted by our own future selves." Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the audience. Dr. Marcus Webb, the council's chief skeptic, leaned forward in his seat. "Dr. Voss, you're asking us to believe in time travel and self-causation paradoxes. The scientific community requires extraordinary evidence for such extraordinary claims." Elena nodded, activating the next sequence of data. "The evidence is overwhelming. The crystal contains detailed blueprints of human genetic development, including specific mutations that were introduced at precise moments in our evolutionary history. But more than that, it contains records of the temporal interventions themselves." The holographic display showed a complex timeline stretching back millions of years, with highlighted points marking crucial moments in human development. Each intervention was documented with scientific precision, showing how future humans had traveled back to subtly guide their own species' growth. "The first intervention occurred approximately 7 million years ago," Elena continued, "when our future selves influenced the genetic split between early hominids and other primates. They introduced specific neural pathway enhancements that would eventually lead to advanced problem-solving abilities and creative thinking." Tom stood up from his position at the data console, adding his analysis. "The interventions weren't random. Each one was carefully calculated to introduce just enough change to push development forward, without creating paradoxes or disrupting the timeline. Our future selves were incredibly careful to preserve causality, while ensuring our species would eventually develop the technology to complete the loop." Dr. Sarah Chun, a leading geneticist, raised her hand. "But this implies that we were always destined to develop time travel technology. How can you prove that these interventions actually occurred, rather than being natural evolutionary developments?" Elena smiled, having anticipated this question. "Because we found the signatures of the temporal technology itself embedded in our DNA, quantum markers that could only have been placed there by devices that don't yet exist in our current time, but which we are apparently destined to create." The implications began to sink in throughout the chamber. Humanity wasn't just another intelligent species, they were a closed temporal loop, a species that had literally created itself through mastery of time and causality. "The most remarkable aspect," Elena continued, "is what this reveals about human potential. Every major breakthrough in our history, the development of language, agriculture, mathematics, the scientific method, even artistic expression, all of these were guided by our future selves who understood exactly what capabilities we needed to develop." Dr. Webb stood up, his face pale. "Are you telling us that free will is an illusion? That our future is predetermined?" "Quite the opposite," Elena replied firmly. "Our future selves didn't determine our choices, they ensured we would have the capability to make those choices. They gave us the tools, but how we use them is entirely up to us. The crystal contains warnings about potential futures where humanity failed to reach its potential, along with guidance about the paths that lead to our ultimate success." The chamber fell silent as the weight of the revelation settled over everyone present. Humanity wasn't just a species that had achieved intelligence. They were a species that had transcended time itself to ensure their own existence and growth. "What happens now?" asked Dr. Chen. Elena looked around the room at the faces of humanity's brightest minds, seeing the same mixture of awe and determination that she had felt when first encountering the crystal. "Now we live up to our potential. We become the future selves who made all of this possible. We ensure that the loop closes properly, and in doing so, we unlock capabilities that we can barely imagine." The message was clear. Humanity wasn't just Special, they were unprecedented in the universe, a species that had solved the ultimate puzzle of existence by becoming their own creators across time. 1 year after the revelation, humanity had transformed in ways that seemed impossible. The knowledge contained within the Martian crystal had accelerated technological development at an unprecedented pace. Research facilities across Earth and Mars worked around the clock to decode the temporal blueprints, while teams of scientists raced to understand the implications of their own future interventions. Alina found herself at the center of a new kind of research, temporal archaeology. She led a team dedicated to identifying the exact moments in history when their future selves had intervened, and more importantly, understanding how to prepare for the day when they would need to travel back and close the loop themselves. "We've identified 17 major intervention points," Tom reported during their weekly briefing in the expanded Prometheus facility. "Each one corresponds to a crucial leap in human development. The pattern is becoming clear: our future selves were essentially guiding us through a carefully orchestrated educational curriculum spanning millions of years." Alina studied the temporal map they had constructed, marveling at its elegance. "It's like a masterpiece of engineering. Every intervention built upon the previous ones, creating a foundation for the next leap forward. No wonder human development seemed to accelerate so dramatically in recent centuries. We were approaching the point where we would need to understand these concepts ourselves." Dr. Lisa Park, the team's newest member and a specialist in quantum mechanics, looked up from her calculations. "I've been analyzing the energy requirements for the temporal interventions. The technology needed to accomplish these changes is staggering. We're talking about devices that can manipulate causality itself while maintaining perfect temporal stability." The implications were both thrilling and daunting. Humanity would need to develop technology that could reshape the past without destroying the present, a feat that required not just scientific advancement, but also a level of wisdom and responsibility that few species could achieve. "The crystal contains more than just technical specifications," Alina noted, pulling up another section of data. "There are psychological and philosophical guidelines for the time travelers. Our future selves understood that wielding this kind of power required a specific mindset, one focused on nurturing rather than controlling, on subtle guidance rather than direct manipulation." Tom nodded, highlighting a particularly fascinating section of the data. "Look at this, they even included safeguards against paradoxes. The interventions were designed to be self-correcting. If something went wrong with one intervention, the subsequent ones would automatically adjust to compensate. It's like they built redundancy into the fabric of causality itself." As the team worked, reports came in from around the world about humanity's rapid advancement. New technologies were emerging monthly, from quantum computers that could simulate consciousness to medical treatments that seemed to unlock hidden potentials in human biology. It was as if the species was remembering capabilities they had always possessed, but never known how to access. "There's something else," Dr. Park said, her voice filled with excitement. "I've been studying the quantum signatures in human DNA, and I think I found something incredible. The temporal interventions didn't just enhance our intelligence, they gave us the ability to perceive and manipulate quantum fields directly." Alina felt a thrill of recognition. "That would explain the sudden breakthrough in our research. We're not just learning about these technologies, we're developing an intuitive understanding of them." "Exactly. And if the pattern holds, we should be approaching the point where we can begin testing preliminary temporal manipulation techniques. The crystal contains what appears to be a training program, a series of increasingly complex exercises designed to prepare us for our first backward journey through time." The weight of responsibility settled over the team. They weren't just scientists studying an ancient mystery. They were students preparing for the most important assignment in human history. The success of their species depended on their ability to master these technologies and use them wisely. Elena looked around the room at her colleagues, seeing the same determination that had driven every human breakthrough throughout history. We need to accelerate our timeline. If we're right about the pattern, we have approximately 2 years before we need to attempt our first temporal intervention. That means we need to master technologies that our future selves spent centuries developing. Sounds impossible, Tom said with a grin. But then again, we've been doing impossible things for millions of years. We just didn't know it was us doing them. The team returned to their work with renewed purpose. They were no longer just decoding the past, they were preparing to create it. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday morning that would forever change humanity's understanding of its place in the universe. Dr. Elena Voss stood in the newly constructed Temporal Research Center, watching as the first human-built time displacement device hummed to life. The machine, constructed using blueprints decoded from the Martian crystal, was both elegant and impossibly complex, a fusion of quantum mechanics and consciousness that seemed to operate as much on intention as on physics. All readings are stable, reported Dr. Park, her fingers dancing across holographic controls. The temporal field is maintaining coherence, and the quantum anchors are holding steady. We're ready for the first test. Elena felt a mixture of anticipation and terror. They had spent 2 years preparing for this moment, training with simulations and theoretical exercises, but nothing could have prepared them for the reality of actually manipulating time itself. The weight of their species' future rested on the success of this first attempt. Remember, Elena addressed the team, we're not trying to change anything yet. This is purely an observational mission. We're going back 3 days to observe and verify that our presence doesn't disrupt the timeline. If the crystal's guidance is correct, we should be able to maintain temporal stability through careful observation alone. Tom stepped forward, volunteering. As the first test subject, I've memorized every detail of last Tuesday's events in this facility. If anything changes, we'll know immediately. As Tom entered the displacement chamber, Elena couldn't help but marvel at the journey that had brought them to this point. Humanity had spent millions of years unknowingly following a path laid out by their own future selves, developing the intelligence and wisdom necessary to eventually travel back and create that very path. Initiating temporal displacement, Dr. Park announced. Duration, exactly 1 hour. Destination, 72 hours ago, observation deck 7. The machine's hum intensified, and Tom vanished in a brief flash of quantum light. Elena held her breath, knowing that in the next 60 minutes, they would discover whether humanity was truly ready to fulfill its destiny as its own creators. The hour passed in tense silence, with the team monitoring quantum signatures and temporal stability readings. When Tom reappeared, his face was radiant with wonder and excitement. It worked, he said simply. I was there. I watched myself from 3 days ago working at the console, completely unaware that I was observing from the future. The timeline remained stable, and I could feel the ... the rightness of it. Like I belonged there, like I was always meant to be there. Elena felt tears of joy streaming down her face. The first successful human time travel experiment. We've actually done it, but Tom's expression grew more serious. There's something else. While I was there, I received what I can only describe as a message. Not through any technological means, but through direct consciousness transfer. Our future selves were communicating with me, guiding me, showing me what comes next. He activated a holographic display, showing data that hadn't existed before his temporal journey. They've given us the coordinates and timing for our first actual intervention. We need to travel back 7 million years, to the moment when our species first diverged from other primates. And Elena ... They want you to be the one to do it. Elena felt the weight of destiny settling on her shoulders. She had spent her entire career studying the past, but now she was being asked to travel back and actively shape it. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. "The intervention is subtle," Tom continued, displaying the new data. "We're not changing any major events. Instead, we're introducing a specific quantum resonance into the DNA of a small population of early hominids. This resonance will lay the foundation for enhanced neural development over millions of years." Dr. Park studied the readings with growing excitement. "It's brilliant. The quantum signature will act like a seed, slowly influencing genetic development in ways that appear completely natural to outside observers. By the time the changes become significant, they'll be indistinguishable from normal evolutionary processes." Elena nodded, understanding the elegance of the approach. "And because we're implementing the same changes that our future selves already made, we're not creating a paradox, we're completing a closed loop that has always existed." The team spent the next several weeks preparing for the mission. Elena trained with the temporal displacement technology, learning to navigate the quantum currents that connected past and future. She studied the specific intervention protocols, memorizing every detail of the genetic modifications she would need to implement. On the day of the mission, as Elena stood in the displacement chamber, she felt the weight of her species' entire history resting on her shoulders. She was about to become the first human to travel back and actively participate in the creation of humanity itself. "Ready?" asked Dr. Park. Elena nodded, her heart racing with anticipation. "Let's close the loop." 7 million years in the past, Dr. Elena Voss materialized on the African savanna under a sky that had never been touched by human eyes. The temporal displacement had been perfect. She stood invisible to the primitive creatures around her, existing in a quantum state that allowed her to observe and act without being detected. The air was clean and wild, filled with sounds and scents that no human had ever experienced. Before her, a small group of early hominids moved through the grasslands, unaware that they were about to become the foundation of something unprecedented in the universe. Elena felt the weight of the quantum modification device in her hands, a tool designed by her future self to introduce the genetic changes that would, over millions of years, guide these creatures toward becoming humanity. "Beginning intervention protocol," she whispered, knowing that her words were being recorded by quantum entanglement communicators that would carry her message across time to her team in the present. "Target population identified. Initiating genetic quantum resonance modification." The device hummed softly as Elena activated it, sending invisible waves of quantum energy toward the small group of early hominids. The modifications were subtle, tiny changes to neural development patterns that would only become apparent after thousands of generations. But Elena could feel the significance of the moment. She was literally creating the potential for human consciousness, language, creativity, and everything that would follow. As the modifications took hold, Elena experienced something extraordinary. Through the quantum connection she shared with her subjects, she could perceive flashes of the future they would create. She saw the first use of tools, the discovery of fire, the development of language. She witnessed the construction of the first cities, the invention of writing, the birth of science and art. But more than that, she saw the other interventions that would follow. She watched as future versions of her colleagues traveled back to guide humanity through crucial moments of development. Tom introducing the genetic modifications that would enhance human creativity during the Renaissance. Dr. Park influencing the quantum discoveries that would lead to their current breakthrough. An entire chain of temporal gardeners, each one nurturing humanity's growth with invisible care. "Modification complete," Elena reported, her voice filled with awe. "Quantum signatures are stable and integrating naturally with the target DNA. The loop is closing." As she prepared to return to her own time, Elena felt a presence beside her. Without turning, she knew that one of her future selves was there, perhaps from centuries or even millennia ahead, observing this crucial moment in their species' self-creation. "Well done," came a voice that was unmistakably her own, but older and filled with wisdom that spanned countless years. "You've just taken the first step in humanity's greatest achievement, the transcendence of linear time and the mastery of our own destiny." Elena turned to see herself, aged and radiant with knowledge, standing in the quantum space beside her. "How many more interventions will there be?" "As many as it takes," her future self replied. "Humanity's journey doesn't end with mastering time travel. It begins there. We become gardeners of possibility itself, nurturing not just our own species but consciousness throughout the universe. We become the bridge between what is and what could be." The future Elena gestured toward the early hominids who were continuing their daily activities, unaware that they had just been touched by their own descendants. They carry within them now the seeds of something magnificent, not just intelligence, but wisdom. Not just survival, but the drive to create, to explore, to transcend their limitations. We've given ourselves the greatest gift possible, the ability to become more than we ever imagined. As Elena prepared for her return journey, her future self offered one final piece of guidance. "Remember, we are not the end of this story, we are the beginning. The loop we've created doesn't just ensure our past. It opens infinite possibilities for our future. Humanity has become a species that exists across all of time simultaneously, learning from our past and future selves to create something truly unprecedented in the universe." The temporal displacement activated, and Elena found herself back in the research center, surrounded by her colleagues' anxious faces, but she was no longer the same person who had left. She had become part of something larger, a temporal community of human consciousness that spanned millions of years. "It's done," she announced, her voice carrying new depths of understanding. "The loop is complete. But more than that, we've discovered that we're not just a species that created itself, we're a species that has transcended time itself. We exist across all moments simultaneously, learning and growing and guiding ourselves toward possibilities we can't even imagine yet." Tom and Dr. Park exchanged glances, seeing the transformation in their colleague. "What happens now?" Tom asked. Elena smiled, feeling the presence of countless future selves reaching back across time to support and guide them. "Now we explore what it truly means to be human. We've proven that consciousness can overcome any limitation, even the flow of time itself. We've become living proof that intelligence, creativity, and wisdom can reshape reality itself." She looked around at her colleagues and felt a deep sense of completion and beginning. "We are humanity, not just a species, but a force of consciousness that has made itself master of time, space, and possibility. And this is only the beginning of what we can become." The story of humanity's self-creation was complete, but the story of what they would become was just beginning. They had evolved beyond evolution itself, becoming something the universe had never seen before, a species that was simultaneously its own creator, student, and teacher across all of time.